Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laser Focus. This is the deep dive pop culture podcast from Nerdist. My name is Kyle Anderson. Thank you so much for listening. I'm very excited to be joined by my guest this week, who is a longtime collaborator and friend. You're on friend level. You can see his work on New Rockstars on Nerdist YouTube, and also you can hear him on his own podcast, Heroes Reforged. Welcome, Hector Navarro. Hi, Hector.
Hi, Kyle. You're also my friend, so I appreciate that so much. And this is a really great topic, and I cannot wait to get into it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, our main topic this week is we're gonna kind of go back and forth on what we hope to see in both the DCU and the MCU of stuff that hasn't been announced yet.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of room, especially in the DCU, for stuff that and the MCU too, for that matter. Like the world is kind of their oyster at this point. They can kind of write their own stories. So before we get into that, I did want to kind of check in with you on what you're feeling about some of the bigger projects coming out this year. So we have X-Men 97, which as at time of recording, we just had episode 6 last week. We're about what are you thinking about it? How are you feeling about the show?
It's exceeding my expectations. I'm loving it. It's insane. And I'm also experiencing this interesting thing where, like, I'm kind of mad at the show's response a little bit. It has nothing to do with the show, but I am peeved at the fans who are using it to bash everything else, who are using it to
Mm.
be like, "Thank you. This is what the MCU needed, something not connected to the MCU." And I'm like, "Well, hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. That's not why that those kinds of comparisons I think are um totally off in terms of like the reason why we have disliked certain superhero movies of the recent year or so is not because those superhero movies are like connected to a larger superhero universe. That's got nothing to do with anything. It just keeps coming down to the writing because to me, X-Men
Yeah.
97 is also super involved and has a ton of characters. They're just using the characters all really, really well. And the so far exciting thing about X-Men 97 is that we haven't seen yet how those storytellers are going to play with the larger Marvel universe that they now have access to, that they did not have access
Hmm.
to in the 1990s when they were doing the X-Men show. That was a show where they had to slip in past the people that were checking this kind of stuff, a little Black Panther cameo, a silent shot of this character up on a rock ridge when they're in
Right.
Africa, just as like a nod to the fans. And they had to fight and struggle to get a Captain America episode in season 5, where now and that's the other thing that's bothered me too, is that like people keep holding up that show and they're going, "Pff, man, these guys are showing Marvel Studios how it's done." And I'm like, it's the same people who have been producing the past few movies that or TV shows that you didn't like are the same ones that hired this creative team. So like it's all sort of possible, and especially recently in the past couple days, I've seen the conversation of like, well, this should just be what the X-Men are in the MCU. Just like merge the universes and just say that those are the X-Men. And I also like chafe at that a little bit because I want to see Marvel Studios take on those characters from the beginning without having to loop in potential baggage, good and bad, continuity, good and bad, that comes with 5+ seasons of a animated show that's got a lot of just so many different moving parts, meaning I want to see them do Charles Xavier, an X-Men team, the first X-Men team, preferably with a Cyclops and a Jean Grey characters that like then evolve over the year, the same way they did with the Tom Holland Spider-Man. So that's been
Yeah.
my thing as a fan as I'm seeing this show and like it is moving me to tears. It's such a good show. And then I'm seeing the fans be like, just shortcut it, just do this. And I'm like, you don't. The reason this show works so well is because it's working off of a really great established continuity of those 5 seasons. Plus, the writers are coming in and they're like, well, what if Jean was pregnant? Well, what if Jean at some point was swapped with Madeline Pryor? Or what if this, and this? And I think that the age old conversation with comic book superhero media fans that goes back and forth between like good storytelling and adhering to continuity. It always feels like the internet decides it's a one or the other. When I'm like, you can do
Yeah.
both, and some of the best stuff embraces both. That's the point. So that's where I'm at with X-Men 97. And I guess similarly, the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer where people are like, finally, like a good, and I'm like, again, it's the same people that have like greenlit this thing.
Yeah.
It's this, and that same notion of like, I don't care about Marvel Studios, Marvel Cinematic Universe. I just want a good movie. And it's like that's what they're trying to do every single time. I promise you, that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, I felt like you're about to jump in with something, Kyle. When I mentioned the trailer, what are you thinking? How are you feeling right now?
Well, no, I was, there's a couple things about that. Like, I completely agree with you. I think people are taking like you just accept the win of X-Men 97 being good.
Yes,
Like,
right, right.
you know, like just be happy with that. You don't have to compare it to other things. But it's also there have been 30 years of people loving that
Yeah,
cartoon, thinking about what can come next.
right,
And those characters are ingrained in people who, of our
right.
age who grew up watching that stuff. And so they expect stuff like that. To just shorthand that, that's that to me is effectively what Deadpool and Wolverine is
Hmm.
doing, because it's like, well, now we can play with this thing. Let's officially put the Fox era stuff
Right,
down.
right, right.
And and the fact that like the Charles Xavier we saw in Multiverse of Madness is in effect the live action version of the cartoon
Right.
version. Like, it's a mixture of the Fox and the cartoon, and it's like that's what they're doing this so because they know that we know all this
Hmm.
stuff. But I'm with you. Like, you need to have just get rid of the baggage. I think it's the
Yeah,
baggage that's going to be the problem. Is
yeah,
like if you have, um, I think that's, I mean, honestly, the same problem that was dragging down the DCEU there for a while. It was just
yeah,
like, and they didn't even have years and years. It was just baggage of like, you're not making movies fast enough. You're changing course all the
yeah.
time. And it started to get to the point where people were getting tired of that. And I think that is the problem with where the MCU is at, is that they are kind of spoiled by their own success because Infinity War and Endgame was such a great like culmination. And then like, where do you go from there? We
Yeah,
want to keep making
yeah,
money. Obviously, that's a big thing.
yeah.
They were forced by people who are no longer at the company to announce things that they weren't ready to
Sure,
announce,
sure.
like all this stuff. And then also the pandemic like played a huge
Yeah.
factor. So
I
I'm
have a hot take, Kyle, in that I think that the
yeah.
biggest problem with the MCU right now, at the time of this recording, is that they're not leaning into their continuity enough. That's my hot take.
Mm,
So when we go through some of these options, some of our picks for like this main topic, including we may circle back to a conversation about the X-Men. I don't know. That might factor into my picks. Um,
go
I
figure.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So I've got some maybe they're hot takes, but I think it boils down to it is a weird transitional period, and it has been for like phase 4 and now phase 5 of the MCU.
Yeah.
But I think it's different, but it's not too far off from like phase 1 and 2. But I think there's some key differences, and I might bring some of those up. So thank you for giving me this platform to air all of
Oh,
my
you're very
nerdy
welcome.
grievances. Thank you.
Yeah, it has definitely been like, phase 4 was a mixed bag for
Hmm.
sure. Coming right off of, the last 2 years of it, of the previous, the Infinity Saga, you had Thor Ragnarok.
Mhm.
I mean, you could just keep going back, like it's all good stuff, but like
Mhm.
Spider-Man: Homecoming, Thor: Ragnarok, Black Panther, Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I think is much better than initially people gave it credit for.
Sure.
Has a lot of interesting stuff in it. Captain Marvel, which wasn't my favorite thing, but I know people liked it, and then Endgame and Far From Home. So it's like there is a huge span of like good to great
Yeah.
superhero movies.
Yeah.
How do you follow that up? And it was sort of like, and I think one of the biggest problems with Phase 5 is that it has felt really disjointed. Phase 4 and 5 was that really disjointed in terms of like, okay, you get a Black Widow movie, but she's already dead, so this one doesn't quite count, but it does introduce Yelena Belova and
Mhm.
sort of whatever. And then Shang-Chi apparently has nothing to do with anything. Like, they've never
Mhm.
brought that back. Eternals is apparently going to just get shuffled off. Nobody, even though there was a lot of continuity stuff in Eternals,
Mhm.
and then it was all just kind of I won't say fan service necessarily, but Spider-Man No Way Home is a fan service movie, as good as it is,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a fan service movie
Yes.
for all its faults.
Mhm.
Thor: Love and Thunder and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever had their own issues that were unrelated to what the movie ought to have been. Like Love
Sure.
and Thunder, I think was you had a creator who didn't want to make it anymore. I think
Probably.
it's the main issue.
Probably, yeah.
Um, and then Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, like it's a miracle it's as good as it is, considering like they had to change direction
Yes.
so abruptly after
Yes.
the passing of Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
So, um, and then I think Phase Five only is a few movies in, but like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was, I think, the biggest, I will say, like misstep in terms of like you're trying to do this big reset of a new villain and everything like that,
Mhm.
unrelated to the Jonathan Majors of it
Right,
all.
right.
Um, Ant-Man is not the character for that.
Yeah, I think
That was my biggest issue. It's
you're
like,
right, it's 2 things, it's like, God, do wanna see Ant-Man step up and upgrade to, like, a bigger
yeah,
stage, and I also want them to introduce this villain that's gonna be comparable to Thanos, but, like, those 2 things shouldn't have happened in the same movie, and I agree.
totally.
It's a real bummer. It's a real bummer because there are
Yeah.
things in that movie that I love and I think are really fun and funny, and when I heard the rumors or the reports that like, oh, the people at Marvel Studios were really surprised at how that film was received. I kind of see where they're coming from. I'm like, yeah, I kind of get it too. Cause like again, so far, all of those elements are winning elements that were successful in previous
Hmm.
movies. Paul Rudd is always a winning element. And they come out with this movie with a great, again, sidestepping the Jonathan Majors of it all, great performance from that actor with like a really potentially interesting villain and setup, and just to have the audience kind of turn on it the way it did was tough because it's I don't know. I don't know if at a conceptual level, again on paper it's like, okay, we've been teasing it the whole movie we're going to spend in the quantum realm. On paper, yeah, that's what I would have done too. And then the end result
Mm,
is I think because even that decision was made, audiences went, "This whole thing is CG. Ugh, looks bad." And they keep showing like those environments that do look crappy in the quantum realm, but then nobody ever talks about the environments that look really cool. All the
yeah.
characters and aliens and stuff that look really cool. They're like in past movies, people seem to really enjoy that stuff, and then this one is it's just those faults of the movie ended up being the narrative.
Yeah.
That's a bummer. And again, I know people really harshed on the Marvels, which I think wasn't as good as it should have been, but was
Hmm.
nowhere near close to what the way people talked about it. And I was like, this is a bummer. This sucks that the one with the 3 women, 2 women of color, like a woman villain who's also played by an actress of color, like that's though with those optics, people decided to tear into it. And I'm like, have you guys seen other superhero movies recently? Other ones are bad. They're much more worse than this one. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's been weird. And I think those are the only 2 films in Phase 5 so far. Am I wrong? What else is in Phase 5?
Guardians 3 was the other
Oh,
one.
sure. Which is another one that this is a controversial statement, Kyle. This is going to be controversial coming from me. I think it is great. I don't think it is as good as the narrative where fans were like, finally, James Gunn saves the Marvel. And I'm like, interesting
Yeah.
that you guys are really sort of propping up. Like James Gunn has earned it. Do not get me wrong. But a couple of years ago, this was Taika. A couple of years ago, this was like, I'm like,
Hmm.
it's interesting how the pattern sort of happens. And maybe
Yeah.
the real test is going to be Superman, and we'll talk about that. But like James Gunn taking on Superman, I'm so excited about. I'm also really, really
Me too.
nervous about for a bunch of reasons, and I'm just nervous for the fan response. Like the internet's going to be awful. So thank goodness
Yeah.
to South African apartheid winner Elon Musk, where he's made Twitter so unbearable that I'm spending less time on it anyway. Like, so maybe
Yeah.
I'll miss a bunch of that, but it's going to be a terrible time on the internet when Superman comes out and people are like, James Gunn made Superman funny. Like, it's going to be awful. It's going to be bad.
Yeah. Eric Diaz and I talked about a few, maybe like a month or two on the podcast, like about how hard it is to adapt Superman,
Yes.
and like what a
Yeah.
huge problem, or not problem, but just like a challenge that Gunn has set for himself. And he's approaching it, I think, the right way, which is we are starting a new
Yep.
version of the DC
Yep.
universe on film.
Yep.
You must start with Superman.
Agreed.
You must.
Agreed.
And I like that he's acknowledging that there are heroes before Superman. He's not the first
Yeah.
hero ever.
Yeah. 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 And it may be a few
But
years
like,
into the bigger story, so there's the
yeah,
potential to be like, "Oh, Guy Gardner's the new Green Lantern," but, like, before him, Kyle and John or John
Right.
and Hal rather. And yeah, I think it's the smartest thing to, and again, this goes back to like, why are fans then wanting to just like absorb X-Men 97? That's such its own thing.
Yeah.
That anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I could talk about X-Men here in a
Yeah.
second, but yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to go through. Do you want to start? I mean, we didn't talk about this
No, we did
beforehand. Do you
not.
want to go? Do you want to go back and forth from DC to
It's up
MC,
to
or do you
you.
want to?
It's up to you. I also
Okay.
put it, I don't know if you have it in any particular order, but I've got my 5 for each universe.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
did sort of do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, one being like my most hoped for,
Yeah.
my most.
I did the
Okay.
same. I
Okay,
did the
great.
same.
So, I mean, I don't know if that'd be confusing to the listeners if we're bouncing back, or do you want to stick in each
Yeah.
universe, or
Okay. Let's do one at a time.
okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
let's do. Um, since we're talking about James Gunn and the
Yeah.
DCU, let's talk about that. And that's kind of the I guess the untested one, because obviously nothing has come out yet.
Yes. But things
And
have been
there's been
announced. But
weird.
things have
Yes.
been announced, but even after those announcements, James Gunn has said, "We've shifted some stuff around, like so we
Hmm.
don't have an actual exact clear," which is fine. This is how movies work. We don't have the clear,
Yes.
definitive release date calendar of this stuff. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. The only one we know so far is that his Superman has a release date of July 11th, 2025, written and directed by him. It's filming currently. All the I like the fact that you've got, Guy Gardner in it, you got Hawkgirl in
Yeah.
it, you've got Absorbing Man in it, like very interesting. Oh, and Mr. Terrific in it as well. Like
Mhm.
I'm stoked about all that stuff.
Yeah.
The other ones that have been
You said
announced,
absorbing man. I think you mean metamorpho, and I'm also very. It is what's
I
funny
sure
is
do.
your brain
I
said
sure
absorbing
do.
man, and my brain went metamorpho. Yeah, for sure, because they're very similar.
Yeah.
That's great.
You're
That's
absolutely right.
great.
That is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
The other ones that have been announced, the Authority, which is the weird kind of wild card one,
Yeah.
which also kind of speaks to they're bringing in other, I guess, facets of DC Comics
Yes.
that
Good.
started elsewhere,
Good.
and I think it's good. Yeah. Brave and the Bold, which will be exciting to see, sort of a take on Batman that has first of all a Robin. Let's bring Robin back.
Yeah.
Robin erasure
Yeah.
needs to end,
I know.
but also that it's Damian Wayne. And the image that they showed, when they first announced it, was Damian attacking Batman, but it wasn't Bruce, it was Dick.
Mm.
So like I am kind of intrigued about all that
Hmm.
stuff, because I love that run. I just finished rereading Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely and other people's Batman and Robin with Dick as Batman, and I think there's room there for that, and I think that would be a really interesting thing, which we can of course see what that's going to
Yeah.
be.
Wow.
Superman Woman of Tomorrow is a direct adaptation of that great Tom King and Bill Cavell comic.
Hmm.
Really good.
I that
And
that
then
that
there's going to be
title also always trips me up because it's very cleverly
yeah.
Supergirl woman of tomorrow. So it's not
Yes.
Superwoman. It's not Supergirl girl of tomorrow. It's Supergirl woman of
Yeah.
tomorrow, as it should be. But that's always an interesting like
Yeah.
the CBS show, the CW show Supergirl covered that conversation of like, why is she's a full grown woman? Why is she called Supergirl? And I think they did a decent job of justifying it, like girl shouldn't be a bad word. Girl is good. And, anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
that always trips me up.
Um, and then James Mangold writing and directing a Swamp Thing movie, which I'm really excited about.
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
bringing in that aspect of it. But then in the interim, and then because that was all announced the beginning of last year, a little over a year ago. In the interim, they've announced a Teen Titans movie,
Hmm.
which is also written by Ana Noguera, who's writing Supergirl, which is exciting.
Hmm.
And then we have TV shows: Creature Commandos, the animated series, Peacemaker, Waller, Lanterns, Paradise Lost, which will be like the I
The,
almost said Westeros.
yeah.
That's not what I meant.
The history of Themyscira. Yeah.
Themyscira, yeah, and Booster Gold, and then there somewhere in there, there's going to be an Arkham series that is from Matt Reeves, but not part of his
Yeah.
universe,
Yep. Interesting.
which I
Very
think is
interesting.
cool. Again,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's what we have. That's what we know about in the MC or the DCU.
Yeah.
And so yeah, let's hit it. Let's go from 5 to 1.
You
Obviously,
got it.
Hector, give me your number
My
5.
number 5 most wanted project in the DC universe, in James Gunn DCU, is Plastic Man. Plastic Man, live action, starring Ben Schwartz, is such a no brainer to me. I don't know how that hasn't been officially announced. It is a movie that is going to feel like The Mask, but I think it's a stealth movie where people don't realize that that character, Plastic Man, real name Eel O'Brien, has a really interesting backstory where he was like a random thug criminal that Batman beat up one night. And in his criminal life, he's the one who accidentally gets exposed to the, the radioactive goo or whatever that turns him into Plastic Man. I think after a Batman Brave and the Bold, where Batman is reestablished in this world, where it is Bruce Wayne, I think there's no better, and this is true about Plastic Man, there's no better character to vouch for Plastic Man as a good character than Batman, which is what he does in the comics
Mm,
when he vouches for him for Justice League membership. I want them to eventually build up to that JLA, speaking of Grant Morrison, that version of the Justice League with like the core sort of seven. But I think Plastic Man should be in that lineup. And I think James Gunn is setting up a DCU where a Justice League did exist at one point. Maybe it was small numbers. Maybe it was Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. Like
mhm,
the new versions of these characters when they were just starting out. And then at current time, when we see Superman, the Justice League is going to be Justice League International. Hence why we
mhm.
see Booster Gold and, Metamorpho and Hawk Girl and these other characters. And I think Gunn could eventually lead back around to the same way that happened in the comic books in DC Comics. It was an event. It was a big deal when the JLA came back. But to have Plastic Man be the comedic character in that versus like the Flash, like they tried to do
Right.
with the Ezra Miller version of the Flash as like the young Spider-Man type. I just think Plastic Man is such an underused, underrated character, and I think that with James Gunn's sensibilities and special effects where they are today, just like it could just be such a blast. So Ben Schwartz is my guy. I want them to do Plastic Man. That's my number 5 movie.
I love
Okay,
it, and they've talked about doing Plastic Man, or it's been rumored, I
yeah,
guess, and with Schwartz, and he's wanted to do it for such a
yes,
long time. And I think you're absolutely right. I think you need a character like that, and also like the fact that they are kind of stealthily saying that like, oh, the Justice League International roster of
sure,
characters are the existent
cool,
ones. You need some weirdos in there, and that's kind of Plastic Man's great for that. And I also just think like um the special effects have gotten so good to the point where like
yeah,
you can actually do justice to that.
yeah,
When you look back at the mask is a really good
yeah.
comparison. That was like cutting edge at the time,
And they
but
and they and
like
they relied on Jim Carrey's natural skills to really help sell it, and it's like you could do that, but, that's why you get somebody like a Ben Schwartz, who I think is can be
yeah,
so funny and kind of a dick and kind of endearing and,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really stoked about that. Okay, so number 5 for me, I went I was looking through my comics, and we know what's coming for the most part. Even
Sure,
if they haven't announced
sure.
it, you know roughly who's going to appear. So I was trying to find characters who maybe haven't been discussed in a while or whatever. Do you remember back in one of the many projects that fell through in the DCEU was going to be Blackhawks? You remember that?
I do, yes. Steven Spielberg was gonna
So
direct it. Yeah, like,
Steven
okay,
Spielberg was
great.
going to direct Blackhawks. So I'm not doing Blackhawks, but it's of that
Ah.
level. And I'm going with Adam Strange.
Ooh, great pick. Great pick.
Yes, I love Adam Strange because then you can bring in the cosmic side of the DCU,
True, true.
which I think is another huge. To me, in both Marvel and DC, you have grounded, earthbound stuff,
Mhm,
you have space, and you have horror, and all
mhm,
both of them do those things, and some do better than others. You can argue that maybe like Marvel is better at cosmic stuff and DC's better at horror stuff or
mhm.
whatever, but I think the space characters in DC are actually really interesting, and I love the idea of because he's effect. I mean, Adam Strange, for those who don't know, because he is kind of a weirdo, like a kind of obscure pick. He was John Carter of Mars, except not of Mars, and like later. So he wears a rocket pack. He's got a laser gun. He looks like Commander Cody or something like that, like
Love
all
it.
those old serials. And he ends up. The first comic of his that I ever read was I forget when it was, sometime early 2000s, but the Ron Thanagar War,
Yeah, do that.
where like yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Like let's see the planet of the Hawk people versus the Thanagarians, and it's just like that. I want that. I
yeah,
think that would be really fun. And or the Ronians, I forget which one's which.
yeah.
I forget which
I
planet's
think
which.
Hawk people are
Um,
Thanagar, I think.
I
But
think you're right. Yeah.
and I liked how you are saying to bring up the cosmic side because the space stuff in DC is more than just the Green Lanterns. So it would be really
Yes.
smart to, and also one of my favorite takes on this character is the take that you see in DC The New Frontier. I think
Yes.
originally it may have been like a deleted scene. Maybe it's in the sort of complete collection that you can get now, but like that he's somebody who's in Arkham Asylum who people think he is insane because of what he's talking about.
Right.
Like, you don't understand. I was caught on a beam of light and I visited another planet and I fell in love with the princess and I'm trying to get back there to say like that's such great material for this guy's insane. And then oop twist, turns out he's been telling the truth the whole time. That I could just
Yeah.
see them marketing the hell out of that. That makes a great trailer. That makes just like, and to start planting the seeds of that larger DC space tapestry, I think would be great. So yeah, as soon as you said Adam Strange, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
they could do the Rand Thanagarian War. Of do that. Yeah,
Yeah. And I think that, also having him be you don't want to do direct comparisons, and I think somebody else should write and direct it, but like it's not dissimilar to the idea of the Guardians of the
true.
Galaxy in the
Very
MCU,
true.
where you have a human
Yep.
person from Earth who goes and has all these
Especially
adventures.
especially like the way James Gunn took a Peter Quill character who was kind of established, kind of there, had some personality,
Hmm.
but James Gunn really took that character and potentially Nicole Perlman, who also co-wrote the first draft of the first
Hmm.
Guardians movie screenplay, took the character and really fleshed him out with like a really fun personality that you love. Now imagine just a great charismatic actor who's playing this character that they announced that is playing Adam Strange, and then people get really excited like, well, I love that actor, what the hell is that? And they could imbue that character with maybe more personality than the sort of stoic 50s sci-fi tropey version that the character draws inspiration from. So yeah, lot to do there. Excellent pick, Kyle. Really good. Really good.
Thank
I
you.
keep looking at my list. I'm like, I wonder if what Kyle's going to say is also present in my list. We're going to find out. We have no idea.
Yeah, because that was the one thing. Like, there was the question before we started: should we show each other the list? I like the surprise
Yeah,
aspect of
me
it, but I
too.
do have alternates if
Okay.
you say
Oh,
something
okay.
that. So,
I'll
yeah,
just be like, that's my number two. Like, I'm fine with
yeah,
you
yeah,
doing
totally.
that. Hmm.
We've done that before. Okay,
Okay.
number 4 for DC. What are you
I
hoping
have
for?
got Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter. If we're
Yes.
talking Darwin Cook, we're talking New Frontier. Martian Manhunter, I think, is such a beautiful character, and I love in the past few years the movement towards having the character's human form, John Jones, Detective John Jones, traditionally instead of John Jones, be a black man in the United States, like as an American character, I think is really compelling. I would love a Martian
Mhm.
Manhunter film that is a period piece in the 50s. Like, I love that notion that what if John Jones had been on Earth since the 50s, hidden? But it isn't until the past couple years, Superman very publicly comes out that sort of like maybe inspires other people in the world to kind of be like, I've been a superhero too. I'm a superhero too. I love that notion, but to have John Jones be an allegory for that sort of story, what this alien deals with, taking on the skin and the appearance of a black man in the 50s in the United States, holy shit, there's so many things you could do with that. That if it were me, if I were DC Studios, I would be looking for great black writers and directors who'd want to do this and set up this character who again is also happens to be one of the most powerful members of the Justice League and has just like a really cool vibe and could be comparable to in terms of like powers and maybe sometimes personality could be compared to like the Vision. And I really like what Paul Bettany did with that character over the years and how the Vision it was used in the Avengers movies. I'd love to see a John Jones Martian Manhunter take on that role, but to establish him beforehand and go, this is who the Martian Manhunter is. This is his origin. He's been here since the 50s. What is his life like? What is, without being that sort of, you know, the kind of story about like a marginalized person that is just torturous, but more about
Mm.
I really liked the way that these conversations were being had with like the HBO Watchmen show. That
Yeah.
level of it, where they're not shying away from the reality, but they're still putting it in a comic book world and they're still telling really like inspirational stories. Like that's the kind of thing I would love to see. So and also because DC could be argued that it's at its best when it's very Silver Age, and it could be argued that most of the Silver Age characters are very white. So I think that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why Martian Manhunter's been looked at and been like, well, who says he's got to be like he's the shape shifting character? Like there's not a versus like a Clark Kent. that's a great conversation too about like what ethnicity, what race should a Clark Kent or rather Kal-El be as a baby when he lands on Earth. But I think there's an interesting argument or conversation to be had about Clark where it's like, well, for him, even as Superman, to find as much success as he does he kind of need to be a good-looking white guy? And that's an interesting, the same way that like Steve Rogers needs to be a white man for that story, but then later there's other takes on the Captain America mythos that can bring in not only Sam but like the Isaiah story slash tragedy. Like that should all be a part of the Captain America legacy. But yeah, but Martian Manhunter to me is a no-brainer to tell a really, really good story that like people walk out of that theater and they go, "That's my new favorite DC character, Martian Manhunter. Awesome."
Yeah. I think, and I've always loved Martian Manhunter, and I loved him especially in the Justice League cartoon as
Mhm.
voiced by Carl Lumley, and I think
Beautiful.
one of the best things and about him is just like his kind of he's so soft spoken and he has been around a long time, but he's the outsider.
Yeah,
He's the outsider among
yeah,
outsiders, essentially. I love that idea because so many takes on the Justice League. Well, first of all, they will leave him out sometimes. Like that's just something that happens a fair amount.
sure.
But also like he doesn't. I think it's high time he gets his own kind of like solo story,
Yeah,
and a big screen. So that seems like such a great idea. And then he can show up and be part of the Justice League, and that's totally
yep.
acceptable. But he shouldn't just be. I'm only in the Justice League movies. Like I just don't think that's fair to the
I
character.
agree.
And yeah,
I agree. Yeah. Speaking of Carl Lumbly, that's Isaiah. That's what I'm talking about.
no, yeah, you're
you
absolutely
bring in
right.
an
Yeah, I
actor
forgot.
like that to play and what a beautiful performance he does. And then at the end of the Justice League Unlimited, where he's like revealed as been living as a Chinese guy, like an older Chinese, because he fell in love with an older Chinese woman, and he just shows up at the Great Wall when there's a big battle, is the coolest shit ever. It's so great.
Yeah,
All right,
I
who's
love
your
it.
number 4, Kyle?
My number 4, um, it's gonna be tough to do because I think it's been traditionally very hard for people to do, Jack Kirby stuff.
Mm, mm.
But I think the end road is, into the New Gods and everything like that. I RIP to that another movie that should have been
Yep,
made, the Ava DuVernay New Gods
yep.
movie, but, a Mr. Miracle movie, that's my pick. I
Yes.
love Mr. Miracle. It's such a strange character, the fact that he is this incredibly powerful, guy who comes to Earth and is uh an escape artist for a long time, and like that's why he's called Mr. Miracle. And like that's another one that like I could probably spend the entire roster either just doing Grant Morrison or Tom King
Mhm,
comics because they're
mhm.
all really interesting.
I know,
But
I was gonna
the
say,
Mr.
you so far
Miracle,
pulled from 2 Tom King books. Let me try to guess the other ones.
yeah,
You've got Omega Men as a pitch, you've got,
right,
Human Target, that's the other one you got, maybe? We'll see, we'll
yeah.
see.
I didn't mean to do that initially, but like um uh I think that aspect of, and it's such a sad book. Like if you've read Tom King's
I
Mr.
have.
Miracle,
It is
and,
so
and
sad.
it's so sad. I mean, it's probably the saddest superhero book I've read in a really long
Mhm.
time. And but you get to see how much he loves Big Barda, and you get to see like just kind of how ridiculous this ongoing war is between
Yes.
Darkseid
Yes.
and
Highfather,
Allfather,
Eugenesis, yeah.
Highfather, sorry. Yeah. And but I love him as like as he's like, I have a life on Earth. I don't really want to do this, but I'm gonna go do this thing. I like the kind of workaday aspect of his
Yep,
character where he's just like,
yep.
all things being considered, I'd rather be in Philadelphia. Like,
Yeah. I know he's got such a great iconography with his costume, but I remember the first time I
yeah.
saw an image from that particular comic book where he just looked like the normal dude with, like, black hair, a little messy, he was wearing, like, a superhero graphic tee. I just went, "Oh, that's so smart to take that character who's had this very Kirby imagery and
Mm,
to just make him look like a dude." It was so like, I immediately wanted to read it. I immediately sided with that character. So, hell of a pick, and I think Mr. Miracle would be a great entry point to those larger characters that you could then build up to do, like, a New Gods movie or, like, a Apocalypse Attacks, New Genesis War or whatever, Dark Side War, whatever they wanna do. So,
yeah.
smart, man. Really smart.
Well, and I just don't. I think he's the one that if you if you're trying to introduce an audience who doesn't read the comics the way that we do, and people of our ilk do, to the New God stuff, which is super out there. And we saw that like from the Eternals, which is a harder sell, I think, than New Gods anyway. But
Yeah.
you really have to give it the kind of weirdness angle. You can't take it too down the middle. And I
Yep.
think that was maybe part of the issue with the Eternals. It's just
Maybe
like
too
they're
grounded.
unknowable.
Yeah.
They're too
Yeah.
grounded. So I think you have to go weird with it. But also like he is the one who can be the like he's put upon, but he's so like we never really see the bad in that book. We just see him covered in blood afterwards, and it's just like,
I
oh
know.
God,
I know.
what a waste of time. And I love it anyway. So
It's
yeah,
awesome.
I
That's
I
awesome.
promise I'll try not to say too many Tom King books, but
We'll see.
I do. I think he's good. I think he's good.
You're gonna see my influences. You already mentioned Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. Those are my influences. The DC animated universe. My next pick. Can I get into
Yeah,
my net? Can I launch into my next
please.
pick,
Yeah,
Kyle?
number 3.
No, my
Let's
number
do it.
3, Static Shock, should be officially confirmed. Right? I got the thumbs
Yeah,
up here. I got the thumbs up from Kyle. Um,
yeah.
Talk about a no-brainer project. This is the template for Miles Morales 10 years before Miles Morales appeared, 10, 15 years before Miles Morales.
Mm,
And to be able to loop in the milestone characters and to celebrate that, which is a pivotal point of comics history. This is a guy who, this young kid is like a Spider-Man type, and DC doesn't have as many of those. And it is such a
no.
great superhero style of character. Um, a live action Static Shock movie, I think, would do incredibly well at the box office. I think all of mine are movies. None of them I'm envisioning as TV shows. Yes, Martian Manhunter
Okay.
could be a TV show like before a film, but like I really look at all of them, even Plastic Man, and I'm like, I think they're all deserving of a movie, and we'll
Hmm.
go from there, you know. But especially Static, I think is such a great character, and in the right hands would just be the most fun, stylish, cool, young feeling movie that you know, a studio run by James Gunn and people of his generation and fans of our generation, like you desperately need that youth, you desperately need that energy. So Static Shock, come on, you got to get Phil Lamar like to play the dad, like you got like come on, that kind
Yeah,
of, it's just no brainer stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
I would love that. Yeah. You're absolutely right. Like that's another like he's here's how popular he is. He
Yeah.
was part of the DCAU
Yeah.
and nobody knows about it. Like
Right.
he doesn't like I don't think they've put out Static Shock on Blu-ray, I don't think.
Just on DVD, and
Um
only the
just on DVD.
DVDs were, like, only orderable through Warner Brothers, like, made-to-order cartoon website where you could also get DVDs of, like, the Herculoids and, like, you know,
Right.
like, random old Hanna-Barbera cartoons and Warner Brothers cartoon Thundar the Barbarian and stuff, so, like, yeah, this guy has kinda been through it and needs that resurgence, and I know that, like, the creators have talked, there's been a rumored Static movie that, like, I think at one point, wasn't Michael B. Jordan attached or, like, interested or
Oh
something?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
just like, with whatever state the DC brand was in the past, with this new DC universe, it promises to be very open, very malleable, very, like, primed to, like, bring a character in. Because before when they were like, "We wanna do a Static movie," I think even then the rumor was like, "It's gonna be its own thing, it's gonna be standalone," which is like, again, it kind of misses the point of a superhero character a little bit, especially one from Marvel or DC. They all know each other. That's the point, you know? I love to get cool and
Mhm.
unique takes from different storytellers, but do that and still have the door open to be like, and at the end of the movie, Static is going to meet, you know, Wally West and Kyle Rayner or whatever, like, or he's going to meet Batman and Batman's going to come talk to him and be like, you know, we got our eye on you, kid, or whatever dumb stuff that we love. It's just such
Yeah.
a no brainer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like he shouldn't be siloed, like
Yes.
as much and to the credit of um James Gunn and Peter Safran, they have used this aspect of what I'm about to say as a means of keeping the character in continuity, but the Blue Beetle movie, other than just mentioning Batman,
Right.
really
Right.
felt completely unrelated to anything.
That's my
Yep,
T-shirt, Kyle. I have a
yep,
Blue Beetle
wearing a
T-shirt.
Blue Beetle,
Okay,
and
great.
the movie Blue Beetle too. Good,
Yeah,
good, yeah.
yeah.
Um,
All right, what's your
Mine
number
is
3?
Japanese Spider-Man.
Very cool, very cool.
Um,
Marvel and DC, very cool.
yeah. So my number 3 is a cheat
Okay.
because I had so many characters that I wanted to do, and so I was like, why not just do a team book, bro? So, and this is something they've talked about over the years, but I've wanted to see it for over a decade, I think, at this point. I want Justice League Dark because
Ooh,
they
yeah.
opened the door
Yep.
to horror with
Yep.
Swamp Thing,
Yep.
but there are so many great characters. I would want Zatanna front and center.
Yep.
That's who I want because it was almost just going to be a Zatanna movie, which
Yeah.
I'd actually just be fine with if
Cool.
there was a Zatanna movie.
Cool.
But Deadman,
Mm.
Phantom Stranger,
Mm.
maybe Spectre can pop in and out, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
I love those kind of weird occult kind of characters. And I would almost say don't have Constantine in it right away because you want the
Good
other,
call.
he would just take over, I think is the thing.
Good call. You're right. You're
Um,
right. You're absolutely right. And he's had a movie, and they might want to do another Keanu one, which is this weird thing. I'm like, sure,
yeah.
whatever you guys want to do. I agree with that. I would save John Constantine. And you got to have Detective Chimp in there, though. You want to talk about,
Oh yeah. Detective
come
Chimp.
on,
Absolutely.
marketable,
Yeah.
marketable. Excellent pick. Yeah, again, that's another
Yeah.
one that's like, man, maybe like the DCEU couldn't support something like that. Maybe there's a bunch of reasons why. I think Guillermo del Toro was supposed to be doing one years ago. Wasn't
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams attached to one or was going to produce one
Oh
or
yeah. I
something?
think maybe.
So
Yeah.
I would just love to know like the specific. It's always a bummer living in Los Angeles. You sometimes will meet somebody at a party and you go, "Oh, what do you do?" And then you find out that they work in some production company in some way, and then you go, "Huh, didn't you guys announce a movie and why was it canceled or whatever?" And like
Yeah.
sometimes like you'll have conversations like this for real over a weekend and a person will go, "Yeah, the reason was blank." And sometimes you hear like the real truth or the real reason behind stuff and you go, "What the hell? That's so dumb, man." So I don't know what the reasons would be for why Justice League Dark didn't go ahead. It should have like obviously been greenlit and put into production, but I'd like to think that it's all any reason why like a DC movie never happened in the past. I'd like to think it's just for like the creative reason of like, wow, we don't really have like the infrastructure of a DC universe, and we don't have a new John Constantine built up yet and established, or a Swamp Thing, or a this or a that. But Kyle, great pick because a Swamp Thing, James Mangold could so easily lead into this, and this is the way to get all the goths in the theaters. You know what I mean? Like they're going to be
Yeah.
big fans of the DCU once you tell them Justice League Dark is coming.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a silly name,
Yeah.
but like that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Like it is the Justice League of the occult characters. And I think that it very rarely is there a place for those characters. And he's open, like he being James Gunn, opened the door when he first thing out the gate, you announce a Swamp Thing movie
Great.
and saying it's going to be
Great.
darker. And like I think some of the parts of the MCU kind of feel like they have to kind of justify, oh, it's okay that this is a little darker than like Moon Knight or something like that.
Sure,
It's like
sure.
it's.
But you're saying the Swamp
But
Thing is establishing from the get, we'll do a rated
from the
R,
get,
we'll do a darker, more mature story.
yeah.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And that just uh, and also I just want to see Zatanna and Deadman and
Yeah.
Phantom Stranger and characters that I love and maybe even the Question or something like that. Just people who are like really great characters who just don't have anywhere else to fit.
Yeah.
Put them all together. I think that's going to
You
be
gotta
fun.
steal something from I think it was Batman Brave and the Bold, maybe I'm wrong, but the character of Deadman, his real name is Boston Brand, and for some reason, that
Mhm.
cartoon show decided that he should be from Boston, so he just has the thickest Boston accent, and now that's how I hear Deadman when I read a comic book that has Deadman. It like, you gotta do that. Just give me just have Bill Burr be Deadman would be the funniest thing in the just like
I love
so
it.
sick of being dead and having to like inhabit people's bodies and do stuff like that would be so great.
Yeah.
So great.
That is such a funny idea. And I mean,
He
Deadman's
looks
already
like he
bald. So,
looks
I
like
mean,
Dead Man. He already looks like him. He
yeah,
looks like him.
you're
That's
absolutely
great.
right.
That's great. All right.
That's,
My number 2, you wanna hear
yeah.
my number 2?
Number 2, let's hear it.
Also from the DCAU, Batman Beyond. And I have a specific caveat. That's another
You know
one.
what? I won't even say this was my number 2
Was it?
also. So good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, but my
Yeah.
my thing is, and maybe we'll disagree with this, but I think that this needs to come after. It needs to be a film. It needs to be live action. As much as I think a Batman Beyond
Yep.
animated film would be dope, I think that this is what I'm drawing on. There was so much emotion behind the fact that Kevin Conroy played Batman for years in the 90s. And at the end of that decade, 1999, Batman Beyond debuts, and it's Kevin Conroy still voicing this older version of Bruce Wayne, who's supposed to be like
Mhm.
90 years old. And I've loved that they just took the design and aged him up, but it is supposed to be the Bruce Wayne. from Batman the Animated Series, New Batman Adventures, eventually Justice League, because we're gonna go after Batman Beyond debuted. That was the thing that let them know, I think we could do a Justice League show, and then they did, and it was still Kevin. But my thing is, after you establish Batman the Brave and the Bold, and like their new version of their own Batman, that's not the Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson Batman, it's not the DCEU, it's this thing that I think they're going to take as much care as James Gunn has been taking with Superman. You get that actor who I think, with a Damian coming into the picture, if it is Bruce, and I have a feeling it's going to be Bruce, it's not going to be Dick Grayson as Batman in the role, only because that might be
Mhm.
one too many like asks for an audience to kind of, to get back into the Batman of it all.
Yeah.
I do think we're going to get Dick as Nightwing, though. I think he'll be in the movie, and it's going to be a young Nightwing. Um, but you get this actor who is going to need to have a 10 to 12-year-old Damien son. So this actor is, I mean, if we're pushing it, he's 30 to 40. He's somewhere in that range. I think that a Bruce Wayne that he's going to cast is going to be 38 to 43 years old. That's sort of like Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man 1 age. To have a great established actor in this role who could play the role for 10 plus years as Batman ages into a normal human age. But to have that 40-year-old Batman who feels like he's lived some years, who feels like he could be a father, and now learning he's a father to this kid he didn't know about, but now he's going to take on this role. I think that's the actor you put in old age makeup in a movie that is
Mm.
this future. Okay, we're not telling you exactly when, but 20 to 30 years from now, in the year 2049 or something, 2045, um, Bruce Wayne is older and alone, and this is the same continuity as we've been establishing. That's part of the thrill. It's like when you read Legion of Superheroes, knowing that they're 1,000 years in the future, but they still are in the same DC universe that like was inspired and saved by Superman and other superheroes of the millennium past. You have to have a world where Terry McGinnis shows up and he's reacting to what the world is, along with Bruce Wayne being like, the world has passed me by. You need to be the new Batman. Um, it's just like Batman Beyond was such a great show because it was its own thing, and yet there were little touches, things here and there. Wayne Industries became Wayne Powers. Like there's like a corporate merger that, well, who the hell is this? Who are these Powers people? And then Derek Powers became a villain as Blight or whatever. But um, little moments where like Terry McGinnis would mention something offhand about Nightwing or Superman, and then Superman is still active at that time. And you got the guy who's playing him now, Corn Sweat, have him show up as Superman, maybe a little older, but Superman ages slower. Like that's part of the thrill and the joy that was the show Batman Beyond. And I think when people talk about it and they're like, "Oh, they should just do an animated Batman," I would go, again, hang on a minute. You're losing some of the things that made it great. And
Mhm.
I think that to follow what the DCAU did in the late 90s, early 2000s was awesome because, again, Justice League did crossovers with the Batman Beyond era. It's like you could do that. And then a future Justice League movie, they travel into the future. Or Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis comes back in time. Or we get to see in that movie an older Virgil Hawkins static, like they did in the cartoon show.
Yeah.
Like that stuff would all be so, so dope. And so I'd love to see a Legion of Superheroes movie as well. Don't get me wrong, but I think that that's very, very much far in the future. And the Legion, for what it's worth, I think it's also great when they get to be a part of Clark's young life. When
Yes.
they come and visit him and then maybe erase his memory, whatever they decide to do, that stuff would be great too. But Batman Beyond to me was almost like the end of the DC story, but it still had that hope of like, well, there's always going to be a Batman. It's just so good, Kyle. So that would be my pick. I know it's a big ask to take because people have said just have Michael Keaton do it. And that's where I go, hang
Yeah.
on. If you do that,
Yeah.
does that come with the baggage of, well, this is the same Batman from Batman and Batman Returns? And I guess the Flash movie answered my question, which is no, it doesn't have to be. It's just like
Yeah.
another universe counterpart, but still played by Keaton. And I think that's still kind of like it's a waste of Keaton. If you're gonna do
Yeah.
Keaton Returns and puts on the cowl, like let him do his Batman 3. Let him do a him and Michelle Pfeiffer are still together or they're still in each other's lives or whatever. But instead, he was kind of used in the Flash, and I don't think it really worked. But
Mm.
I think he would be great in an older Batman role. I think the whole point was this was Kevin Conroy who voiced this character, who played this character, and then not that long after we get here's at the end of his life, and it's sad, dude. It's not happy. He's by
Yeah.
himself. Um, but Terry brings in that that sort of hope in his life again. Um, and then he later finds out he's his biological father. But the point is,
Yeah.
is that to have an actor be like, "Hey, this is who Batman is," in Batman: Brave and the Bold, and then they announce Batman Beyond is coming 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Whoa, really? And then they like put that same actor in old age makeup to be the Bruce, but I just think that that could blow minds. That could
Yeah.
be really cool that people wouldn't see coming, and they're like, "Oh, okay, that's how it's sort of supposed to work." Instead of, and then plus you just the whole live action aspect of like doing a Blade Runner 24-9 style movie, but with the DC characters is it's great. It's great. Animation would be
Yeah.
killer, but save the animation stuff for other DC properties that like maybe wouldn't ever really work in live action. I just think that
Yeah.
Batman Beyond could.
Yeah. That was years and years ago before Flash, because Flash sort of took the wind out of that sails. I would have said, because to your point, Kevin Conroy is and was so beloved as
Yes.
Batman
Yes.
that when he came back, it made it real. It
Yes.
made it like, this is really Batman training somebody else. And to me, the only person who had that kind of gravitas from the people who'd played him at that point was Michael
You're not
Keaton.
wrong. You're
However,
not wrong.
you're absolutely right that like the Flash movie did not use him properly, and it was all just kind of like, "Hey, look, it's Michael Keaton." I would have I mean, our one of the biggest problems of movie making nowadays is everything is so ephemeral, but like him in the Batgirl movie would have been much more
Right.
interesting to me, which obviously never ended up happening, but that would have been much more up my alley,
Agreed.
because that's as close, you know, and that would have been close to what we want from this Batman Beyond movie. But I love what you're saying about like, let's get this new Batman established, make him officially he is Batman, and then put him in old age makeup. You
Yeah.
know, because we buy it. It's not like we saw Haley Atwell in old age makeup and we're like, oh, that looks terrible.
Right.
Nobody said that.
Right.
Everyone's like, that's Peggy. That's why
Everybody
we
loved
want her to be that.
everybody loved the prosthetics because they're mind blowing that Colin Farrell wore to be the Penguin. Like, just apply that same
Yeah.
tech to an actor who's 40, and then you tell
Yeah.
him, okay, now you have to be this character, but when you're 80. Like a
Yeah.
whole nother part of your life that you haven't lived. Like, God, how great would that be? That'd be so great. Be so great.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. What are we on? Your number two. Hit us with your number two. Was it also Batman Beyond?
My number 2 was Batman
Sweet.
Beyond.
Okay,
We
great.
were the same on that one. Yeah.
We could
So,
just circle
uh,
back to my number one.
yeah, what is your number 1?
Well, honorable mention, release that aforementioned Batgirl movie. James Gunn should do that.
For
Who
real.
cares?
Yeah.
Just do it. I don't care that it makes no sense in any continuity. Release it. It would be silly.
Yeah.
My number one
We
is
all want to see it.
the shirt I'm wearing, Blue Beetle sequel. Like a
Yes.
official confirmed, right? Gunn has said that Xolo Maridueña is coming back. He hasn't confirmed that like all the rest of that cast is necessarily coming back, or that the story is 100% of it's going to be canon. I guess we'll see how he responds to that challenge with Peacemaker season 2 coming out, right? Because
Right.
Peacemaker season 1, DCEU. Peacemaker season 2, DCU. But is that season going to acknowledge, like, who knows? Ultimately, it's not as important as story, don't get me wrong, but I think it still matters that that first Blue Beetle film, first of all, it came out during the strike again. So this is really just a redemption of like, I want these young actors and George Lopez and everybody else in the cast to be able to come back and this time be able to promote the movie and to be able to celebrate it. And to, I was just, that was one of my biggest frustrations, was this particular movie being released during the actor strike, and the writer strike, in that it's just like I know Warner Brothers, the studio, didn't give a shit about the strike. Like, they clearly did not try to resolve it when things were first happening. But this was the
Yeah.
thing I was just like, you are insufferable. You're the worst to let this happen. But also within the story itself, there was no actor cast as Ted Kord. And I'm like, that's so smart that they did that. So I would want to see a
Yeah.
Blue Beetle movie that James Gunn can kind of let fit in his established world, right? To sort of shepherd it a little bit and go, the cast is coming back. Jaime is still the new Blue Beetle. And at one point, like I was saying earlier, the Justice League International, wherever they are now, was Ted and was Booster Gold and was, Nort, the Green Lantern, and whatever else fun stuff they want to do, Fire and Ice and all these characters. But let's have a Blue Beetle movie comes out where Ted Kord comes back because he was missing. Where now we have an actor,
Right.
whether it's Jason Sudeikis or somebody else, playing Ted Kord that fits in this larger DCU. And then within that movie, I want Jaime Blue Beetle to like meet Booster Gold and to meet, and we might get Jaime in the Booster Gold show. I haven't ruled out that possibility that like,
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe somebody even threw that James Gunn's way, and maybe he was like, "Oh, it could be. You never know. Whatever." But just to have Blue Beetle get another film, and to have Warner Brothers and James Gunn and DC Studios like support that and move forward with another young character that kind of has that Spider-Man template, and he also has a big epic story that you could build up to eventually. With with all of the scarabs and all of the different stuff
Yeah.
that's happening up in space. So yeah, that's it. It's just like for personal reasons, bring those actors back. For story reasons, still left unfinished, still could fit. I would love an official confirmation that Blue Beetle 2 or Blue Beetle colon War of the Scarabs or Blue Beetle, ampersand Booster Gold or something is going to be announced as a movie, and we can just kind of go from there. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, or even, I mean, I do want that as well, but like, even if they were like, Jaime's going to be in the Teen Titans or something, like
right.
that, and you go, great,
Yes,
like
for
just
sure.
acknowledge that he's going to be in it. And I completely like I was saying earlier, all they do in that movie, the only thing that is like connective tissue to the DCU in general is that they mention Batman,
Yeah,
but we know that Batman
yeah.
exists in the DCU.
That's
So
it.
it's not like we have to introduce Batman or anything
Right.
like that. I like the idea that Batman has been around a while and it's Superman is the new one.
Yeah,
And I like all that stuff.
yeah.
So I completely agree. I think that would be a really fun idea. And there's so much left to do because like at this point, the least interesting part of what you can do with Blue Beetle or any kind of character like that is the very beginning, the origin story.
And
I think
right,
like
and we've done it. Done.
we've done it so
Yeah,
many
you're right.
times. And I thought it was fun, all the stuff with his family and everything, like, and the kind of body horror aspect of him, like, becoming the Blue Beetle. But at that point, it's like I didn't think Victoria Cord was that interesting.
Right.
Like, just
Mhm.
there's much more to do. I agree with you.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
funny that like it came out much later that they had initially, thought about Jason Sudeikis being Ted Cord because when you see that kind of weird, expressionistic painting
yeah,
of her parents, I was like, that looks like Jason Sudeikis.
yeah.
Like,
I know. And the shape
it's
of his
like,
head
and
and hair, and you're like, "That's
yeah,
yeah, that's what that."
I was like, that's like a Monet painting of Jason Sudeikis.
Absolutely.
So my number one
Yeah.
is this is a weird one. This was a project that was talked about like I think before the Nolan Batman movies.
Ooh.
And it only ever I don't think it was ever like announced, but it was a script that existed and it's by a guy I don't particularly care for, but I think it's a really fun and good idea. This was a David S. Goyer original.
Uh-oh.
Um it was called
I
Supermax. Do you
remember.
remember this
Yes, I
one?
do. Yes, yes, yes. Green
I
Arrow. Okay.
have wanted the Green Arrow in Blackgate or, Bell Rev or someplace.
Yeah.
He has been put in prison. There's a riot, and then he has to try to get himself and somebody who doesn't belong there out. Could be Arkham Asylum, could be anything. There was a DC or animated movie which I think was part of the Arkham game universe
Yeah.
called Escape from Arkham
Yeah.
or Assault on Arkham
Yeah.
rather with Suicide Squad, and I thought that was a great concept. So if you're not gonna I want something like that where it's like a very focused, we're in prison. It's a prison escape movie, but it has Green Arrow. And I think Green Arrow is an interesting and kind of fun choice for that because he's kind of the ground level. He doesn't need to be kind of,
Mhm.
Batman, I think would be too obvious. And,
Mhm.
I like the idea that it's Oliver Queen and you can kind of like there was an Arrow show for 10, 15 years
Yeah.
or however long
Yeah.
that the Arrowverse existed. We don't need an origin story for Oliver Queen.
Agreed.
He can just be the Green Lantern or
Agreed.
the Green Arrow and kind of pop in there. And Hal can be a character because obviously they have a long history together.
Yeah. That would be
But I
awesome.
would love something like that where it's him and a witness or something like that. And, Lex Luthor or some big villain has like boosted, opened the gates and said, whoever kills this person gets
Yep.
X amount of money.
Yep.
And then it's up to Oliver to save them. I think that's such a great
It
idea. It was so like perfect. And I wish they'd gotten to make it. So I want them to make it now.
it would work for a bunch of different reasons, but also to just like establish, hey, if you think Green Arrow is dumb, it kind of is a dumb idea, but this guy's a badass. And
Yeah.
here's a really hardcore action movie that's going to show you he's a badass. And number two, we can really differentiate between the Stephen Amell version of Arrow or Green Arrow
Yes.
with a stronger sort of personality for this character, a stronger look. You got to give him the Errol Flynn, like just
Yep.
from the get, like, oh, what a weird dude to be put in prison, and then make him super liberal. And to
Mhm.
take that character from the comic books with his political ideology, but who's also still a billionaire and like trying to be an ethical billionaire, which is impossible. And to have this is the character you can explore that with, because as much as you want to try to tell that story with Batman, it can never work. You can't really pick apart his billionaire status too much, because
Yeah.
you need that to for him to be the impossible James Bond spy gadgeteer, detective guy. But Green Arrow is the one you can kind of break down a little bit and really have him lose his millions. And who cares if he's not a billionaire in the DCU going forward, or if he is, what does he do? What's his justification? But to put a guy like that who's like very liberal in a prison in the middle of that world, push that personality forward to really differentiate and be like, this is not a, no offense, soap opera, on the CW style Arrow story. This is this
Yeah.
guy who is gonna make you forget about that other TV show, and then going forward, this guy is such a badass. He's gonna be on the Justice League, which
Yeah.
I think is a really fun challenge to, like, Marvel had the Ultimates comic book from the early 2000s to
Mm.
rationalize why would Black Widow and Hawkeye, who have no powers, be a part of this Avengers, whatever. So they did what that comic book did in the movies, which is like they're government agents. And
Mhm.
Hawkeye can use guns and he kills people, man. But like his specialty is a bow and arrow. How fun. How cute is that? But he and Natasha are like spies. Like that's what they do, which wasn't typically the Clint Barton Hawkeye comic book origin, unless you're looking at the Ultimates, which is a more grounded, realistic world, which is fine. But now, like, James Gunn and the DCU can lean opposite. They can go a little bit sillier with some of the stuff. So
Mhm.
I don't need the justification that, like, Oliver Queen has tactical training and he's a former military, soldier who's got an expertise in marksman combat ship, and that's how he gets on the Justice League because the Justice League is a government funded blah 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 blah. No, have him be a dude who dresses up like Robin Hood and uses bows and arrows, but he's really effing good and uses boxing glove arrows. And then there's this prison story. And then after he comes out of that and saves this witness or whatever, a representative of the Justice League shows up and they're like, damn, dude, like you're insane. Okay, you're pretty good.
Yeah.
You can be on the Justice League.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah. You got this witness out of this horrible
Yeah.
situation. You deserve a place on the
Yeah.
Justice League. I
Yeah.
think that's
We could use
such a
you.
great idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. Like, steer into the goofiness of Green Arrow. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he looks like Robin Hood for a reason, because
Yeah.
that's what he
Yeah.
believes. And I would use the Benjamin Percy to name a different, the
Yeah.
rebirth era kind of. That's because he's really hardline liberal in that
Yeah.
book, and I think that's exactly
Agreed.
what it needs to be.
Agreed.
All right, so I like both of our lists for the DCU.
What's
When
your
we get
wait?
to what
Yeah, that was your number one, the Supermax
that
Green
was my
Arrow.
number one. We had
Wonderful.
the same number two.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Okay, great. Okay.
So yeah, what we know is coming out for Marvel, other than Deadpool and Wolverine, which is the only one this year, you got Captain America: Brave New World, Thunderbolts, eventually a Fantastic Four and a Blade movie, Avengers 5 and Secret Wars, and then possibly an Armor Wars movie,
Mhm.
possibly Spider-Man 4, possibly Shang-Chi 2,
Mhm.
and then X-Men somewhere.
Mhm.
And then in terms of television, it's a got a Daredevil. We've got
Mhm.
I mean, who knows when that's actually going to come out, but um uh, uh uh the next Agatha's coming out later this
Yep.
year. Eyes of Wakanda's supposedly coming out this year.
Yeah,
Daredevil Born Again.
animated, right? Eyes of Wakanda? Or am I thinking
I
of
believe
something
that's
else?
correct.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, cool.
No, I don't remember.
Okay. I think it
Your Friendly
is
Neighborhood Spider-Man
animated for
is
sure.
animated.
Mhm.
There's going to be another Wakanda series, so I don't know. Ironheart maybe. So a lot of these are like kind of like Wonder Man,
Yeah.
maybe Nova, maybe Vision
I
Quest,
saw them
maybe.
filming
So,
Wonder Man. I saw that, it's
oh really? Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
There you
saw
go.
some paparazzi photos of like a set and I'm like, "Okay, they are filming or have filmed Wonder Man. All right, that's going to be a TV
Yeah,
show."
yeah.
Um
So it's post production. So
yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely right.
But
So
again,
yeah, so
no
there's
idea.
we have no idea when this is going to come out. We don't
Yeah.
know any number of things. So there's a lot to work with. Plus, we have all those Fox characters and play.
Mm.
So I think
Mm.
one of the challenges for my list is like I didn't necessarily want to only just do X universe or Fantastic Four universe characters, but
Okay.
got to do what we got to do. Look, we got
I
to do what we got to do.
maybe I'm not doing this thinking outside the box enough, like we said, Kyle,
I
because
definitely am not
I think I'm playing
for
this
this
one a
one.
little too safe. I'll kick us off with number 5. It's one you
Number
mentioned
5.
that we know is happening, but this is a specific like take. I want the title to be this, and then we can talk about what I want it to be, but it's a movie. Spider-Man, I want it to be called The Web of Spider-Man. And to
Nice.
me,
I love
that
it.
conjures up that 80s era where Web of Spider-Man was a comic where he had like the black costume, where it was, I think it was supposed to be focused a little bit more on, I think it was a continuation of the series that came before, which was Peter Parker, comma, the Spectacular Spider-Man. So it was like
Mhm.
billed as maybe focusing a little bit more on Peter Parker's life and less on like the Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man story. But really, there's just like another Spidey comic. But the Web of Spider-Man, I want it to be that that little goo eventually finds his way to Peter, Tom Holland, either from a Secret Wars movie or from that beach in Mexico that Tom Hardy left it at, and it somehow finds its way to Peter. But to have this darker version of the character where he has no friends, no family, no one knows that Peter exists until he's got to start fresh. No MJ, no Ned. I want that movie to be about Peter. There's a really interesting quote from Tom Holland where he said in a recent interview where he's talking about something, he was like, yeah, going forward, the Spider-Man aspect of his life is maybe going to take over more and the Peter part's going to sort of fade away. And that scares me, but it also makes me happy if that's what Tom is taking away from like a version of the story that he's seen. If that's where
Mhm.
they're starting, that's where I want it to start, but I want it to end with Peter realizing he is Peter. He needs those connections. He needs to go talk to MJ. He needs to go talk to Ned. He needs to make new friends. He needs to, reintroduce himself to Stephen Strange and the Avengers and people he knew. So I do believe also that there may be a point in the future where like that deal, that spell that Strange cast can be somewhat undone with maybe just
Yeah.
MJ. What a moment if Zendaya's in a movie and she looks at Tom Holland, Peter Parker, and she's like, I remember everything. Like that's the moment I want to see. Maybe if it doesn't happen for a few movies, maybe if in this next movie Peter is in a relationship with a black cat, great. Or like a Gwen Stacy in college, great. Or whatever. But I do love the notion that Peter and MJ are sort of the OTP, the one true pair, as
Yeah.
the kids say. But the black costume to me also makes me think it would be the perfect film for that grounded. Matt Murdock Daredevil comes in, and Matt, as someone with
Mhm.
a dual identity, can talk to Peter to that. He can talk to him about because Peter has seen Tony Stark be public, and maybe the Fantastic Four is going to be public, and this and this and this. He's like, why do I need to be Peter Parker? But then Matt Murdock comes in and goes, this is why, and to have, as rumors say, maybe John Bernthal Punisher in that, to have
Yeah.
a version where Punisher has to go up against him, but mainly also. I don't know if you remember this comic book, but in 2007, with Spider-Man 3 coming out and that black costume, Marvel like put Peter back in the black outfit, just like a cloth black outfit for a spell. And Aunt May got shot and was maybe going to die. And he was so mad, Peter Parker was so mad that he chased down the person who was responsible. It was Wilson Fisk. And he found Wilson, the Kingpin, in jail, in prison, speaking of, and he beat that man within an inch of his life. Did not kill him, but beat him mercilessly. And I'm like, if you go there with this kind of character, it could lead to a lot of people seeing Peter Parker in a new light. But I think that's also such a great rock bottom for him to kind of crawl back out of. And Kingpin's a great character who, whether he's in jail or not, whether he's the mayor or not, he's untouchable. And that's a great character to pair Peter Parker against. So basically, my pitch is just do the Web of Spider-Man, that more grounded, no multiverse shenanigans, as what we've been hearing. And my desire is to just call it that. And then going forward, maybe the next one could be the Spectacular Spider-Man,
Yeah.
to kind of to do the variation. I don't want to see another word like home be used as like the next trilogy is the blank trilogy. I don't want that. I just,
No.
to go one by one. So that's my pitch. Yeah, there we go. What's your number 5? Or sorry, talk
Yeah.
about Spider-Man. Tell me about Spider-Man.
No, I think that's a really good one because like that is something that I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I think he's excellent, but so much of what we've seen so far has been him kind of on his heels because of the Avengers or,
Sure.
and then as in this last movie, like all the multiversal stuff. And I would just love to see him be Spider, which was the promise of the end of that last
Right.
movie, is that he's in the homemade costume, nobody knows who he is, all that stuff. Um, I think that would be really fun, and I think the black costume is a really great way to do it, because you get to see like him without friends, kind of succumbing to his darker urges. I think is a really fun
Yeah.
idea, and yeah, I want Matt Murdock to be a recurring character in
Me
Spider-Man
too.
movies.
Me too. Me too. Really badly. Yeah.
um, so my number 5 is it's Cable. There, I'll just say
Cable.
it. I would love.
Okay, great.
And so here's the thing with this, and I'm not expecting this to be like soon or anything like
Right.
that. These are just things that I would really like. I liked I liked Cable in Deadpool
Sure.
2. I liked him.
Brolin did great.
I would love to see, like, establish the new X-Men, all that stuff, and just be like, you don't even need to get into the Apocalypse or Mr. Sinister angle of it too much, but just show us Cable way in the future doing his body slide by one stuff, and like just like being. He's had a solo series on and off since the
True.
90s, and
True.
I don't feel like, I feel like that kind of gives him carte blanche, not carte blanche, but like he's had enough solo adventures in the future, and jumping back and forth and all that stuff, intersecting with the X-Men and then going away again, that you can do some interesting and fun stuff with him. I also just really like the character of Cable, and I think that um so it can be young Cable like they've had recently, or it can be old Cable, or it can be both of them, which I think is a really fun thing that
Cool.
they're doing in a Fabian Nicieza miniseries currently,
Cool.
where like old Cable recruits young Cable from the future to come to the present and help him do something, and they don't really like each other, because why would they,
Yeah.
and all this stuff. And
That's great.
I like all that stuff. You can get into some crazy time travel shenanigans, and you can do that type of thing without touching Days of Future Past, which I do not want them to do.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
You can do that type of thing, but not that exact story, because that has been done. Frankly, as far as I'm concerned, two great, three, I guess, really, if you count Wolverine and the X-Men, the comic or the cartoon.
Sure. Sure.
X-Men 92 did it. That cartoon did it.
Yeah.
And then I think that's one of the best of the Fox era movies.
I
So
agree.
just don't do that
I
anymore.
agree. Yeah. I don't think so. I don't think we need to do it. I do think that the MCU should at some point attempt its version of the Phoenix Saga. And that's huge.
Not the Dark Phoenix Saga, the Phoenix
No,
Saga.
both, Kyle.
That's what I want.
Both.
I know eventually you have to do dark, but
yeah. Well, maybe we'll see. We'll see how everybody responds to Scarlet Witch, and but I would like to see them to try their take at it. I know that a whole movie was called Dark Phoenix, but it still kind of feels like Fox didn't quite nail it anytime they tried.
at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love for Cable to show up, especially after they establish the X-Men and we get to see some iteration of Scott and Jean, because I think audiences can kind of, part of the fun is they know early on, like, oh my God, this dude, this 65-year-old man who's like 6'8", 320 pounds, is the
Yeah.
son of, so when he shows back up into the present, he can be like, hey dad, like that kind of stuff is really weird and fun, that Scott is like younger than his son, kind of.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
My number 4 is my only X-Men on my list, and it's very,
Okay.
very simple. It's what you just described. Set up the X-Men first. That's my take, and I want to call it X-Men: Children of the Atom. Right?
Yes.
Is that on your list?
Yep.
Is that on
Yep.
your
Yep.
list? No.
No,
Okay.
it's not. But I kind of knew you were going to say this,
Okay,
because I
great.
think you and I have had
Yes.
this conversation before. But
Yeah, maybe we have. And then in that conversation, you're like, we should just do this podcast. You should just come on and do the podcast. But
yeah.
Children of the Atom, I mean, you talk about X-Men 97, the way like Charles Xavier in the most recent episode at the time of this recording just said that phrase. And it's like heartbreaking and beautiful. But also Children of the Atom to me makes me think of the X-Men as a young group and of
Yeah.
teenagers. And I want an X-Men movie done by Marvel Studios after the Secret Wars shenanigans, after saying
Yes.
goodbye to the Fox X-Men universe and Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart and anybody else you want to say goodbye to. Maybe keep around Ryan Reynolds, but X-Men Children of the Atom is like, okay, here's a new actor playing Charles Xavier, here's a new actor playing a Magneto, and this is their new established history. I would still want Magneto to be a survivor of the Holocaust. And people have said, well, how do you do that? How do you do that? And I'm like, it's just part of his power is he ages slow. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me so much as that story element. But Children of the Atom is in the MCU in a world where since 2008 when Iron Man first debuted, an entire generation at this point, because right now in universe in the MCU, it's like 2026, I think. It's like the year
Mhm.
2026. Um, an entire 20 years have passed where you could have young people going, okay, I live in a world with superheroes. And I think to have Charles Xavier be a character who's like, I believe in human and mutant coexistence peacefully, but I am hiding my kids because they will be hunted down. We have to stay hidden. The danger room is for your benefit to know when to like use your abilities, but like stay hidden and save yourselves. For his students to go, we're going to declare ourselves the X-Men. We're going to put on costumes because we know that the way that you can change this world is you have to put on a colorful costume, give yourself a superhero name like
Mhm.
Cyclops, and go out there and publicly be who you are. And that's what's going to get the public to change their opinion on the irrational fear of mutation that they have. And Charles could disagree, and the young kids still lead the way and show themselves anyway. And I brought up this example with the way young people today are politicized and radicalized. I think it is incredible. I think the way that they've used social media, the way they've used Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, the way that they inform themselves and educate themselves and like learn about the world and go, that's an injustice, and then just decide to like attack it. And I think that their frustration in adults is so real, and with the tragedies that have happened in the United States because of dumbness, and stupid laws and fear and all that stuff. God, I would just love like a cast of young people. The way that they found a Tom Holland to play Peter Parker, like, wow, what a great actor
Yeah.
to play this character. And he's still a young guy, but he's in his early 20s now, and he could potentially play that character for as long as he wants. But he owns that character. I want them to cast young actors to play Scott Summers and Jean Grey and Hank McCoy and Warren Worthington III and Bobby Drake. And they don't all have to be good looking young white kids. You can diversify, you
Yeah.
can mix that up. But to have an entire movie where it's these kids going, we're the first class, we are the X-Men. There's other students here, but we're going to put ourselves out there. We're going to challenge the status quo. We, hate the world that hates and fears us, but we're going to protect it because we know it's the right thing to do because we grew up in a world seeing the example of the Avengers and of everybody else. um I think would be really really compelling and really smart. And it's after this first film, and I lost my focus on my camera, whatever. It's after the first movie that you can do an X-Men TV show on Disney Plus that kind of gets a little bit more into the soap opera aspect of it. And then a sequel follow-up film could be either a bunch of those kids have graduated and they're less about being the team, or maybe they go missing on the island nation of Krakoa. And then Charles goes, I need your help, and recruits Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler. Like that's the order of operations I would love to see. And the
Yeah.
same way that people have grown to love Steve Rogers' Captain America over time, who before these movies was such a cheesy cornball character that outsiders who didn't read comics like would never take him seriously. Why would you not want to build up a Scott Summers, a
Yeah.
young actor to play this role, and then 10 years from now, he says to me, my X-Men, the same way we saw in X-Men 97, and it's the coolest, dopest shit. Like
Yeah.
that's what I want, that start from the ground up and let's go from there kind of approach. So Children of the Atom, the children will lead the way. That's my pitch.
I love that, and I think it's a very, like, relatable, position, and I think you're absolutely right, like, young people need kind of, because all of the, not all, Young Avengers is on the way and blah, blah, blah,
Right.
but, um, to have this new version of the characters be led by not people who've been around the block, but young people. I think you're absolutely right. I think that's the way to do it. And like you can make one of the best things about X-Men 97 has been, I mean, he hasn't like fully stepped up yet, but having Sunspot be there
Yes.
because he's a rich kid.
Yeah.
His parents don't, his dad especially, is super wealthy, does not like mutants at
Yeah.
all, so he doesn't want it. And they got into that a little bit in the very not good X-Men The Last
Hmm.
Stand, but like having Warren be that version of it is like, I come from
Perfect.
old money
Perfect.
and I'm a mutant and all that stuff. I think it's yeah, that's a really great
And a
idea.
young actor to play
My
Iceman who's, like, who's gay, and a young actor to play Beast, Hank McCoy, who eventually that actor could end up on the Avengers. Like, I just wanna follow
mhm.
some of those patterns that are so great over the decades of X-Men characters in Marvel Comics in their larger world, and I just think to establish that it's the kids who name themselves, because, boy, what an ego if it is Charles who's like, "You will be called X-Men." Like, no, dude, you that's what an ego. But if the
Yeah.
kids go, "Who are we?" And they're looking around, we're the X-Men, man. Like, that's who we are. And then they get back to the mansion, they get back to the school, and Jean is like, "Scott, we're the X-Men?" He goes, "I don't know. I just came like, yeah, I
Yeah, yeah,
believe
yeah.
in Xavier's, like, we all believe in Xavier's dream. We believe in Xavier's dream. So yeah. Anyway, great.
Yeah, that's the man, am I excited for
I
all that
know.
stuff. Um, so my number 4 is one that you'd mentioned earlier that all of those you think could be movies. This one I do think would be a good movie, but I think would be a much more fun show because you get more adventures with them, and that is a specific adaptation of Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force.
Nice. 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 Yep.
Because you got your darker characters who can go on these clandestine missions for mutant
Yep.
kind, but also they're doing some
Yep.
murders. Um, and if they like incorporate the kind of resurrection aspect of the current era of X-Men or the most recent, I
Yeah.
guess, one of my favorite things about that era of X-Force is that they can just die and then get reborn. So it's like they go on actual no-win
Yep.
missions in order to.
It's
So,
crazy. It's
but I
crazy.
also just like that the mixture of Angel or Archangel. We can figure out ones, specifically from there. But Wolverine, Psylocke,
Yeah.
Deadpool, Phantom X, which is a weird,
Yeah.
character. And then whether or not we want them to use Archangel or pick somebody else, there's plenty out there to choose from. But I love that kind of guy, people on a mission,
Mhm.
who are doing bad stuff and no one's supposed to know about it.
Yeah.
Like if the X-Men are the pillars of we will work together with humanity, we will save them. It's like you're going to need to do some kind of murder
Yeah.
eventually
Yeah.
in order to get stuff off the ground or to save humanity or whatever. And you can either do that or kind of like make it part of like Marauders or something like that, and kind of a darker edge kind of show of different
Yeah,
missions that the
X-Men Dark.
characters
You
go on.
gotta do
That's
Dark X-Men. That's
X-Men
what it
Dark.
is,
Yeah,
X-Men Dark.
absolutely.
No,
Yeah.
that's different. That's a different thing. You gotta do, I love that idea, especially if there is this is another one that's like, I would love to see Marvel Studios tackle this someday, but a proper
Hmm.
X-Men taking on the challenge of Apocalypse, because
Yeah.
that movie didn't do it. But how
Right.
far out is that? But what's great about the Uncanny X-Force is that after Apocalypse, they come across that kid that is him reborn, and it's that, "Would you kill baby Hitler?" It's just a baby,
Hmm.
and yeah, but he's gonna become Hitler. Like, that a whole show exploring that question of, "Are we gonna kill this resurrected En Sabah Nur?" Um, and who's the one that does it? And Deadpool's on that team, and is Ryan Reynolds gonna stick around long enough to do that? That would be great, could be really cool, but
Yeah.
Phantom X especially is the weird wild card that I would love for somebody to
Yeah.
try to tackle that. That'd be great. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Nice pick,
All
good
right.
pick.
No, number three. Number
My
three.
number 3 has been rumored again. This is what I want the title to be: Thor versus Hercules. Or
Ooh, I love it.
yeah, I just think that would no, I'm gonna stick with that. I was gonna say, like,
Thor
yeah,
versus
Thor versus
Hercules. I'm
Hercules.
into
I
it.
don't think the MCU has had a versus movie, I don't think. I think this could be really fun. It establishes that Hercules himself is a co-starring character. You can build up that character to be eventually, put on the Avengers or have his own movie or show or whatever you wanna do, because that's a really fun character that I think is bigger than the one note sort of, Roy Kent version of the character we saw really briefly. I would love to see that actor, Brett Goldstein, stretch it out a little bit, and then also I'd love to see Marvel Studios try to tackle, if Thor is our glorious, sexy, powerful himbo, what role does a Hercules have to play? If that's kind of what he is in the comics, versus the more serious and stoic Thor, but is it reversed in the films, or is there a side to this character where we can have that kind of fun? And I don't think it should be Taika. I think it should be another storyteller coming in and doing a Thor versus Hercules, but also that great, like, bring back Russell Crowe. That was the funniest shit ever. It was so good. Um,
Yeah.
and to see another, like, wonderful Thor movie that explores those characters, maybe this is the one where characters can come back from Valhalla, because we still have that set up. The Warriors
Yeah.
3 and Heimdall, and now Jane Foster herself, like they're there. I'd love to see Sif meet Beta Ray Bill. I'd love to see Beta Ray Bill established in one of these movies. I love that character. So there's like, surprisingly, even after 4 movies, I'm like, there's still more Thor stuff to do, you know?
Yeah.
So, and whether it's also like it could work as a goodbye slash retirement to Hemsworth as Thor because he now has the father role. Maybe it's like starts out as a Thor versus Hercules, but by the end, they have to set aside their differences and comic book superhero team up against something else. But it could be more about like Thor realizing, like, well, Hercules can do what I did, and to pass on that literal torch and go, you can do this, man. It's we I want to go and raise my kid, and you want to go and it's your turn. Be an Avenger now. Be a superhero now.
Yeah.
Like that could help Hercules because maybe he's trying to step out of his father's shadow, or I don't know. There's a million things you could do, but it should be Thor versus Hercules, easily marketable. Let's go. I want to see that done.
Uh, if he doesn't like go off into the sunset, which they probably will do for Chris Hemsworth because he's earned it. The other side, because now we have Galactus, I would love to see him become Herald of Galactus, like in, I think, was that
Whoa.
Donny Cates or
Yeah, you're right.
one
Thor
of
that did
them?
it. Man, that'd be wild.
Yeah, Thor
Man.
became Herald of Galactus.
Okay.
So many people have been the
I
Herald of
know.
Galactus, by
I
the
know.
way. Like, so
I'm
many
like, Marissa
heralds.
Tomei, Aunt May never got to do it. Dang, what a bummer. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, what's your number 3?
um, my number 3 would be a Savage Land movie. Um,
Whoa. All
yeah.
right, out of left field. Okay.
Kazar.
Yeah,
I love Kazar
yeah.
as a very interesting character. And just the Savage Land is just wild. It's got Sauron, the dinosaur man, and just like I would love the idea of a land focused or kind of an area
Mm,
focused
interesting.
adventure where like maybe some of the other characters we've met end up on the Savage Land or something like that.
How come you didn't
You could have
Kyle, how come you didn't pitch a Genosha movie? Too sad? Too soon? We can't do Genosha? Too sad?
can't do well. Genosha is
Yeah,
very
do it,
sad.
Kyle.
I do
Don't
think
do
that
it.
that's.
Don't do it.
I think that could be within an X-Men
Yeah,
movie,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I think having like a plane with people in. Again, this is sort of like the Supermax idea, but just
Mm.
like having characters we know already end up somewhere
Oh,
unfamiliar and
yeah.
have to get out.
And
So
then
like it could
is
be
is Kazar on the plane or Kazar's already there, right? That's the
he's
thing?
already
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
That's where they meet him,
Yeah,
is that
cool.
he's there,
That'd be
and
cool.
they have to team up with him, and that would be cool. But that would be it's instead of somebody new coming into the Avengers, it's the Avengers or members of different
Yeah,
factions
yeah.
having to go there. I think that would just be fun,
I agree.
and also weird stuff, and
It
also
here's a weird pitch.
yeah,
It would be I think a great spot for Elsa Bloodstone, who we saw in Werewolf by Night. Like bring that
yes,
character back because she's seemingly normal human appearing, but has like mad skill. So maybe again, it's like she was put on a plane with other people, whether they knew it or not, to specifically kind of crash on this island because she's got to get somebody out of there or do something. And then
hmm
it's like she comes across Kazar. And maybe she's the only person who can kind of survive because all these other plane passengers just get eaten by dinosaurs and stuff. But like she's a Bloodstone, she's Elsa Bloodstone, she can survive.
right.
That could be awesome. Yeah, I really love that pitch to just Savage Land, Kazar. Um, Maybe even it could be like a Shauna the She Devil origin because she ends up being
Mm,
Kazar's wife. But she is like Kazar was there from when he was a baby, like Tarzan. Like he was there from a long time ago. But Shauna the She Devil's like new, so maybe she could be one of the survivors on the plane. And at the end, some survivors are like, we're escaping, and she's like, I'll stay. Like I love him. It'd be so silly and pulpy and weird, but could be
yeah,
fun. Could be really fun.
I would love them to embrace that
Yeah,
aspect of it because that is a very like 60s era to me.
for
Like
sure,
Kazar, even they go into the 70s,
for
but like
sure.
Kazar is such
Good pick.
um a throwback of a
Good
character.
pick.
All right, top
My
two,
number
number two for
2,
you.
very similar to Blue Beetle, has been rumored but not announced, Nova. I want a Nova
Yes, yes.
movie. I think we still need to figure out what happened to the Nova Corps on Xandar. Like,
Hmm.
and there's no better pitch than sorry to the Richard Rider fans. I know there's a lot of Richard Rider fans. I love the character, but I think Sam Alexander is a really great entry point of my father was his deadbeat dad. Turns out he was a member of the
Mm,
Nova Corps when they were recruiting humans, when they were, so he's actually out in space, like on some prison planet, some prison colony, and I need to go save him. And the opening of that movie is just like in the comic books by Jeff Loeb and Ed McGuinness. it's Gamora and Rocket Raccoon talking to Sam Alexander in his bedroom, and they're like, "This is the kid. All right, we got to get him up there, and we got And it's Zoe Saldana, and it's still Gamora, but she's maybe not. They're not the Guardians of the Galaxy, whatever. She's a Ravager. It's Rocket. That kind of adventure, I think, is such a great entry point. But to have Sam, and this has been my pitch for a while, be mentored by Rich Rider, because he's a bit of a
Mhm.
washed up young superhero who's like, I was a Nova. I am still a Nova. Like, it didn't work out for me. In this world, it hasn't been a new Warriors. There hasn't been this. There hasn't been that. He wasn't on the Avengers. He wasn't this. And then Sam shows up as this new Nova, and that's a chance for Richard Rider to maybe get some redemption. And my pitch was Andy Samberg as Richard Rider. That was my pitch, like a really fun comedic actor who can still bring a little bit of that emotion, but the focus would be on Sam. He's the beginning of the new generation of the sort of cosmic space characters, with a little bit of a baton pass from some Guardians of the Galaxy members, because how could you not do that? So that's my pitch. Nova.
I think that is a really fun idea, and again, like, that is a promise that has yet to be fulfilled,
Yes.
which is that the Nova Corps comes back and that we have a specific Nova to follow. I
Yeah.
think that's a really great
So
idea.
yeah, because
And
I
yeah,
was just gonna say
yeah,
they were decimated in 2014 with the first Guardians of the
right.
Galaxy movie. Again, in universe, it's like 2026. By the time a Nova movie comes out, it could be 2028, 2030, whatever it is in the MCU timeline. Since then, had to have been Richard Rider was a Nova because he was recruited from Earth, because they were opening up their recruitment because they were just destroyed and they need more people. And then at one point, Sam Alexander's dad is also recruited. Like, it's now's the time. I would have said maybe
Yeah.
in 2014 a Nova movie couldn't have worked, but now enough time has passed. Sorry, and I interrupted you. You were saying, Kyle, keep going.
Well, now, yeah, like, and having it be Sam Alexander instead is a really good. And then you can have Richard Rider existing. Like,
Sure.
I'm not saying don't ever have him, but
Yeah.
like, it's this idea of legacy that I think is an important thing. I loved in the first Ant-Man movie where you find out that Hank Pym was around with Howard
Very
Stark and
cool.
like and Peggy
Very
Carter.
cool.
Like, that's the kind of, I wish they did that stuff more
Agreed.
often, where like these older characters have just been there. We just haven't met them yet.
Agreed.
I think
I
that's
mean,
really fun. Yeah,
what a
I'm
great
into that.
reveal in Endgame that like the Ancient One was fighting some of the Chitauri like in 2012. So do
Yeah.
that where Sam Alexander meets Richard Rider, and they also have to call out the fact that his name is technically Dick Rider. Like, you have to call that out. But that's why I was like, it should be Sandberg, like somebody like that. But anyway, to
Yeah.
then do a flashback or something and be like, I was there, but the Avengers weren't interested, or like they didn't see me, or like I embarrassingly, I made it, I made my way to New York right after I got my powers or something, and then, or maybe he was on his way to Sokovia, because if he maybe becomes Nova in like 2014, the big thing that happens in 2015 is Age of Ultron, or the big thing in 2016 was like the airport battle for
Yeah.
for the Avengers and Civil War. So something where it's like you could show somebody like a Sandberg as Richard Rider being like, I tried, I blasted my way in there, but then like a Chitauri knocked me out, or an Ultron drone knocked me out, or something, as a fun like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, he was around, but now it's Sam's time, and then we can move forward from that.
Yeah, that sounds like a great one. Number
Great.
2 for me, this is the exact this is the same exact thing I pitched for the DCU, but now it's the Marvel version, which is Midnight Suns. Give me
Yeah.
a team up of the horror
Yeah.
guys. I want Blade, I want Robbie Reyes, I
Yes.
want Moon Knight,
Yep.
um I want Magic, and I would still like it if
Mm.
Magic were played by Anya Taylor-Joy, but
Mm. Not opposed to that.
neither.
Not opposed to that.
I do think she did a really good job. She was probably the best part of that movie,
Yeah, and
I
I
think.
really liked the actress from Game of Thrones too who played Wolfsbane. I thought she was good too.
Oh, yeah,
But
she was really good.
you're right. That was yeah, I wouldn't be mad at that. And
Yeah,
and
not to say that there's not anybody else who could play that character,
maybe
of
you
course,
gotta
but
do Dane Whitman, Black Knight in there. Like, is that the team
yes,
that
yep,
Blade is recruiting for? That'd
yeah,
be dope.
uh,
I'd
it
also throw in Jack Russell, aka Werewolf by Night, just to be like,
yes,
do him and Moon Knight have beef? I wanna see them fight, maybe? I wanna there's
yeah,
some great supernatural characters in play now. There's the Man Thing. Oh, Man Thing's gotta be on it. Holy shit.
Man-Thing's gotta be in
So
there,
cool.
and because he is a canonical, Marvel character, they have to team up to fight
Oh my
Dracula.
god. Oh my god, no brainer. No brainer.
Yeah.
Great pitch. Great
So,
pitch.
and I've wanted a good, Dracula in the MCU for a while, and I
Yeah.
think Werewolf by Night is really it does so much, that little
Yeah.
short, in less than the amount of, a feature film. I would love more of those characters. Yep,
Yep.
gotta have Jack Russell in there and Man Thing and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
that'd
So
be awesome.
that's my pitch. I have I have a ton of action figures as I
Yeah,
have a shelf
all
that
you
is
collect
all
is X-Men and then the monster guys. That's all you got. That's it.
well nowadays now I have all the Avengers here
Very
too.
nice.
I've really gone over
Very nice.
the
Yeah,
edge,
very nice.
um but yeah, the monster guys, you got, Blade and I think Moon Knight we almost got like I liked a lot of what that show was
Yeah,
doing, but I don't think it fully grasped it was all just like trying to be weird and mysterious and stuff like that. And it's
sure.
like now I want to see Moon Knight be Moon Knight. I
Right.
want to see him actually
And
like
the fun
involved.
thing too is I'm a really big fan of how Oscar did play those different identities.
Yeah, I mean he did a
I
great
think he
job.
did a great job, but like I agree if you have the sort of Mark Spector Moon Knight hero persona, like be darker and more badass, how funny would it be if mid-battle he does swap to Mr. Knight, that
Right.
befuddled British gentleman, like, and the way Oscar plays it, he's going to be the comic relief on that team with just
Yeah.
badass after badass after badass, and then it's Oscar Isaac being like, "Wait, just take a chill pill, cool it." That would be so
Mhm.
much fun. But then you still get space for the badass Moon Knight, and maybe even that Spanish speaking cab driver. I don't know. We'll see. But that would be yeah. I think the rumors are we're going to get a Moon Knight season 2, but I'm also really hoping that that character shows up in an Avengers something. Like, could be
Yeah.
really cool. Really cool.
And one thing that I would not want to do, even though I love the character and I love the way that he has been in the MCU for the most part, is it would be tempting to have Doctor Strange be like an Avenger emeritus part of this
Oh, sure.
organization.
I agree.
Get him out.
Yeah,
He's been in too many of those
I
roles.
agree. I
I
agree.
want have Blade be the one to bring everybody
Agreed.
together.
Agreed.
I think
Maybe
that would be really fun.
not even maybe Wong, but maybe just Madison. Maybe she's also on the team. That's it. But that's it. Then we're putting
Yeah,
our
have
foot
it just
down.
be
That's
Madison.
it. I agree, Kyle.
That's it. No one
No one
else.
else. Just Madison. All right. Speaking of Madison, no, I'm kidding. My number one pick is my number one pick in pitch is going to be World War Hulk. I think it needs to be a film. I think by now Marvel Studios got the rights back to full on do Hulk stuff from Universal. I may be wrong, but I think they did get it back. And
I think so.
and
I
especially
think
now
so.
after establishing She-Hulk and bringing back Abomination, and they're going to reestablish the leader Samuel Stearns in Captain America: Brave New World. I think World War Hulk would be such an awesome movie to set up and almost say goodbye to the Bruce Banner, Mark Ruffalo version of Hulk. There's a lot of
Yes.
things that a lot of characters in the MCU have left to do. So I was really looking at, I'm like, well, which characters have like major storylines that they kind of didn't get a chance to do yet? And this one just is my number one pick. It kept going to the sort of top of my list because Ruffalo, I love his evolution in the MCU thus far. I love the way he plays the character. But I do think that there's a valid criticism there where fans have said, I want to see the Hulk really let loose. And I want to see that effect. And we saw pieces of it in Avengers Age of Ultron, for example, when he kind of loses his mind with the Scarlet Witch. We see little pieces of it with like the Edward Norton, the Incredible Hulk. But especially now that Banner and Bruce have they've set up like a really nice sort of supporting cast with Jennifer Walter She-Hulk, maybe bringing back Liv Tyler, bringing back Samuel Stearns. Ross is now going to be president, Thaddeus Ross. Like, what if there was a World War Hulk movie where it's less about all the Avengers versus the Hulk because the Hulk is mad, but more about Banner in an effort to maybe try to cure himself and something goes wrong, something happens. I thought this was going to happen after they sort of damaged his arm. I thought, ooh, in an effort to maybe heal himself because something went wrong with his healing factor, that's going to lead to he's going to lose control. But instead, it led to the experimentation of the She-Hulk and the setup of Jennifer, which is great. I love that. But we've got the smart Hulk. We have had Ruffalo be like a normal kind of Hulk, but I want to see him go full on savage Hulk. I would love to see him also play Joe Fixit Hulk in a scene at least. Some
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo led movie where it's like he is all these variations of the Hulk. It's very dissociative identity disorder. You look at the Peter David run, you can pull some stuff from there. Bring back what's his name from Modern Family. Have him jacked up with some CG or something and have him green hair, Leonard Sampson. Like, really set this up to go, Bruce Banner is going to have one final attempt to maybe rid the world of Hulk because he loses control or he's still losing it. But Jennifer has to stop him. Maybe bring in a Rick Jones. Like Amadeus
Mm,
Cho would be such a great setup in this movie because his mother was the Doctor in Avengers Age of Ultron. And that was, again, timeline wise, 20 years ago at this point, 10 years ago at this point. Um, Set up a Amadeus Cho is going to be the next Hulk, the totally awesome Hulk, or Brawn as he's known. Like a passing of the torch type movie where Banner looks around and he goes, "My cousin is Hulk. Liv Tyler's Betty Ross is maybe the Red She Hulk. Like my horrible former father-in-law maybe is now the Red Hulk, but he's the president of the United States. And then we got Amadeus, he's the new Hulk. Like go full on with all the Hulks. Abomination could be in it, and he's maybe reformed, maybe. Like, I just want to see Ruffalo play with all those characters, bounce off of those characters, and have a story that feels super high stakes, but it's still the sort of Hulk supporting family that ends up saving the day, and maybe Ruffalo himself. And whether he retires or not, whether he kind of rides off into the sunset, I don't think Mark Ruffalo could play this Bruce Banner character forever, but maybe he can as long as he wants to. But like the cool
mhm.
thing is with the CG aspect of a character like Hulk, he can be in a movie and just be Hulk the whole time, whether he's Smart Hulk or whatever. And then it's a motion capture job for Mark. And that's cool, but I want to see a little bit more of that depth of the Bruce Banner character. Give him that leading. It's just so long overdue, longer overdue than Black Widow, and she got a movie, or Hawkeye, and he got a TV show, and every other Avengers starting character got a movie or 3 movies or more. Nick Fury got a TV show. We got to give Mark Ruffalo a Hulk movie. And I think looking at all the various Hulk comics that are like awesome, you could piece together some really fun remix of like it's an all out Hulks. It's all Hulks all the time. This is what the trailer's going to be, and and bring back She Hulk and everybody else. So that's my number one pick.
And also those Hulk dogs from the Ang Lee
Oh, for
one.
sure. No, of course not, Kyle. Terrible. Man, remember how good we had it before the MCU when movies were like, well, he's got to fight something. Dogs. Gosh, guys, come on.
What if there was a Hulk poodle that he fought?
Uh,
What a weird
I did
movie that
like Nick
was.
Nolte in that
All
movie. That
right, my
was a
number
weird
one.
movie. That was weird. That was weird. All right, sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I like Nick Nolte. No, okay. So my number one. This is. I mean, it's going to cross over eventually with the X-Men, but I would love to see an entire movie based focusing on Longshot in Mojo
This is your
world.
number one pick, Kyle. Surprising. Really surprising.
I know. I was trying to. That's what I was saying. I was trying to
Are
be.
you
I
serious?
think
It's
I went
really
too
long
far.
shot in Mojo World. That's your pitch.
No, it
No,
isn't. How about
stop.
that?
No,
What do you think about
it is your pitch. It is your pitch.
that?
And
That was what I wrote
I
down.
judge too harshly, and I'll say, I'll to quote the great Michelangelo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem, I'm leaning in. So tell me about it. What is it? What's the pitch?
So it, I'm not saying that they won't ever bring back the Guardians, because I think that they will.
Yeah.
And I'm not
Yep.
saying they won't ever go back to the quantum realm, because I think that they probably will eventually.
Yeah.
But I want a big, weird, futuristic world movie. And Mojo is, in my opinion, there are 3 X-Men or X Universe characters who can break the fourth wall or do kind of weirder stuff. You got Deadpool,
Yep.
you have Legion if they ever bring Legion
Yep.
in, and then you have Mojo.
Mojo.
And
Interesting. Okay.
Mojo can watch what's going
That's
on
true.
in the main MCU and kind of like comment on that and try to replicate it. And so he can bring people in from different places. I don't know if it's Longshot the movie, but Longshot I think should be in the
He's a
movie.
great protagonist. He is a
Um,
great protagonist. Yeah.
yeah. And then you get Siren and all of like or Spiral,
Mm-hmm.
not Siren.
Mm-hmm.
And just there's so much potential there for like, this guy is a big evil monster who like abducts people and puts them in death situations, but he's also he runs an interdimensional cable
Yeah.
company. So
Yeah.
like there's that
Yeah.
aspect of, and it is a very 90s or late 80s 90s character, but I still think there's a fun aspect, especially nowadays with all the streaming services and stuff. And maybe it doesn't need to be a movie, it could be a TV show, but there's so much there to comment on, and also like some real stakes, and to have literally he can same way that She-Hulk, the show, like,
Right.
would just be random people from the MCU can just show
That's
up.
true.
He just plucks people in and they all it's the weirdest team up you've ever seen. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was more hoping
It's
for is
definitely,
like,
even stranger and more high stakes than, like, Arcade and Murder World, because he's another
yeah,
weird
which I
villain,
think would be also be fun,
super
but yeah.
fun, but that one has the mojo aspect of it, like you're saying, you get to do commentary on the state of media. So that could be really, really fun for writers and a director or directors to come in and, like, mess with. And I
Mhm.
do like that Longshot could this be like an X-Men movie where Mojo recruits a bunch of like X-Men characters, maybe like a Jubilee or Sunspot that like they were in other movies, but they weren't the stars of those movies. And then
Yeah.
Mojo kind of abducts them and goes like, "Hey, you didn't have it good over there, baby, but over here you could be the star of the show." And so these like B or T, B A or B or C tier characters that were
Yeah.
sort of dealing with their MCU world get sucked into this, and they're like, "Well, now we have to like fight to survive." And then Longshot can be like, "Come with me if you want to live." And he's only got 4 fingers. So he's got to go, "Come with me
Yep.
if you want to live." And he's this sort of like hero of this weird 80s techno goth punk universe. Could be really cool. Could be, but
Yeah. And
it's
that was
out there,
just
dude.
yeah.
This is an out there idea. This is like, man, okay.
And that's what I was like. I was looking at who, because there's gonna be X-Men movies.
Yes,
That's the
yes,
main thing.
yes,
It's like
yes,
there's
yes.
so many runs of X-Men that I
Yeah,
love, and all or most of them have the potential to be adapted. And so I was trying to think of like what has nobody talked about
yeah, that's
that I
true.
want to see.
And what
And so that's why
what could be
like
a fun movie? It's not just about
yeah.
what's a great story on the page, but like you got to be able to see it and visualize it. And the same way that Mojo was sort of used in the original animated X-Men series and in X-Men 97 with the video game aspect, like can you imagine pulling some really cool actors that are playing X-Men characters in X-Men movies? Pulling maybe it's not Cyclops and Jean Grey, but maybe it is that it's like
Yeah.
other characters and other students in the school, pulling them and they're all of a sudden in a teen soap opera drama, that they have to act out for a second and then you shoot it like that and the style is different, and then you it's reminding me of like maybe it's got a little bit like Pleasantville vibes or like
Mm,
what kind of movies have always kind of messed with what was it like Michelle Gondry movie like Be Kind Rewind, but that was like sort of low budget aspect, like hopping into these other forms of stories that these characters that are like X-Men superhero characters have to suffer through could be really fun. It could be a really fun
yeah.
movie or TV show, but or special or something. Oh, maybe one of those
And
special
it
presentations.
it
Either
could be,
way,
yeah, one of those specials would be
a
fun.
movie could be
Yeah.
great. A movie could be great.
But I think an aspect too would be like the kind of professional wrestling aspect where like he picks one of the new people to be the face.
Right.
And so he get like he make it the character thinks that, oh man, I'm doing
Yeah.
great here, but he's actually like they're pulling punches because
Right.
they need to, and then he starts talking back or wanting more money or something like that, and then it's like, oh, that okay,
That
he's
could be
done,
great.
and then it's like incredibly hard or whatever. I think stuff like that would be really fun because you don't see heroes in that. It's sort of like a Heroes for Hire thing, but it's like, what if you were in it for the glory and that's it, and
Right.
like stardom and fame and all that stuff, and
And
that's something you don't really
and
talk
we
about.
saw Hulk in the trailers, but if you didn't see any trailers for Thor Ragnarok and you put on that movie for somebody who's never seen it, maybe a kid, and you get to the arena battle and then out comes the Hulk, it's such a surprise. It's such a great
Yeah.
moment. It was like reading Planet Hulk and then Hulk comes across like the Silver Surfer that was just
Yes.
captured. So
Yes.
like Mojo could do that. Like he'd be like, "And now, ladies and gentlemen, Man Thing," or something, and a random character that he's scooped up from some universe or some reality comes out of a door would be really there's so many things you could do with that. All right,
Yeah.
Kyle, you've
And I
convinced me.
just
Pretty good. Pretty good pitch.
thank you.
Pretty good pitch.
Thank you very much. The other one was what I do think that they will do eventually is a Doctor Doom movie.
A
But hey,
movie. I know. I think we had this conversation too, and I'm like, that makes me nervous too, but I get it. Out of all the villains who could have their own movie, it's him and
yeah.
Magneto. Like you're right. He's such a good
Yeah.
villain. He's such a good villain. Damn.
And I like him more as like head of state. Like he,
Yep. Yep.
that's what I find most interesting about Doctor Doom is not that he was a scientist along with Reed Richards. Like it's that Reed Richards keeps messing up his
Yeah.
plans and stuff like
He's a
that.
monarch
Yeah.
now. Like that's the movie I want
Yeah.
to see. That's the story I want to see. So,
Yeah.
man, we mapped it out, dude. We're geniuses. They should
We
hire
did.
us. We're
That's it.
great.
Yeah. Get on the horn,
Uh-huh.
WB and Disney, who are where I'm sitting right now on
Yeah.
either sides of me. Hector, thanks so much for being here on the show.
Thank you for having me,
Really
Kyle. This was
appreciate
a
it.
lot of fun.
How can people find you and your work on the internet should they choose to
I'm on
do
the
so?
internet at Hector is funny in a couple different places like Instagram and stuff, and then my YouTube channel with my friends is Heroes Reforged, and you can go check that out. And we do have a once a week podcast on a different YouTube channel called Chexicans, because one of us is Czech and two of us are Mexican, so that's where that name comes from. And we do a live show where we talk about this kind of stuff too. So I might have to bring up this topic even. This is a really great topic of like, despite what we know or not know, what do you hope for in these big
Yeah,
franchises that we're invested? You could do this for Star Wars, Star Trek, even
100%.
anything you want.
Yeah, we'll have to have you. We'll have to have you back on the show. I mean, anytime you want to. But I know you're a big Star Trek fan, and I have really come around. I grew up a Star Trek fan, and then the current regime of Paramount Plus stuff
Mhm.
has really brought me back in a
Great.
way that I was not
That's
expecting.
really
So,
great. It's awesome.
so we'll have to
Yeah,
we'll talk some more.
that'd be
But
great.
anybody who wants to follow me on Instagram can do so at functional_nerd. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Kyle_Anderson. Thank you again, Hector. I've been Kyle Anderson. Thanks for listening to Laser Focus. Join me again next week when my guest will be a different person. Bye-bye. Laser Focus is a production of Nerdist Industries and Legendary Digital Networks. It was produced, edited, and hosted by me, Kyle Anderson. For more, visit nerdist.com.